gonna give us another Shania song this week?
Another Shania song that would impress you much, I'm sure. To be honest, to be 100% honest with you, I don't think I know any more of her songs. To be fair,
What do you mean? What do you mean? Shania's Queen.
Shania's Queen. What do you
like Beyonce? Like Beyonce's Queen. Shania's like Queen of Country.
I thought you meant Shania was Queen, as in like Freddie Mercury and the others.
That doesn't sound like you know them.
The band. Oh, you noticed how I lost confidence and went Queen and the others. But I reckon I ought to know because I listen to so much of John Robbins. So Brian May, obviously Freddie, Deacon, John Deacon. Yeah, let's go John Deacon and Roger Taylor.
Oh, very good, mate. Very good.
Is that right?
Bang on the money. Yeah,
nice.
Well, I don't know how this episode could get any better. Really, I think we'll call it there, shall we?
Call it a pod.
Fitz done something right.
Stop the press, mate. Hello, by the way. I guess we start recording. Hello, dear listener. Hope you're well. How are you, Mr. Turner?
I'm doing good, mate. Yeah, I'm doing really, really good. How are you?
I'm very well. I think this is a bit of a giddy start to a pod, but with good reason, I would say, because we've just had an absolute blinder, haven't we?
It's been a belter, isn't it? What an episode! What a nice chat!
Oh my word! You, dear listener, will hear, but yeah, we have just been having a great chat with the one and only Scott Bennett, and just from start to finish, what a lovely bloke! Properly nice.
He really was. He gave me some sound advice. He gave me some horrendous, haunting advice that I will not forget. And yeah, it was a great chat. And it felt, I don't know about you, but it felt like we knew Scott for years. And I've only ever seen him on his Facebook. I've never met the guy before, and it felt straight away from the off that we had all been friends for a long time.
Yeah, I think, obviously he's our first guest appearing on the pod, and that in itself is quite a nerve-wracking thing, but it was a real pleasure from start to finish. And as you say, it kind of didn't really feel like an interview, did it? It was just interview, such a kind of wanky word, but it was just such a lovely chat.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, I think we should save this conversation until the end, and we'll just let the listeners get into Scott Bennett and work out who he is. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, as you say, further ado is shit. So without any of that, let's crack on.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Nice. You're welcome, mate. That is a Fitzism for you.
Further ado is shit. Enjoy the episode, everybody.
But this isn't shit. You're in for a treat. See you on the other side.
Health check passed or something. I don't know what that means.
Look at that. This is Fitz. Hello, Scott, and hi. Sam is the other handsome voice you'll hear in just a sec.
I am indeed. Okay, hello, mate. How are you? Yeah. Thank you.
I'm great.
Thank you very much for doing this.
It's a pleasure. This is I've never come across this technology before. This is pretty impressive. I've not done an audio interview like this, so it seems quite well set up, this stuff. Is it
I would love to take the credit for it, but Sam is self-appointed technical director for our podcast, and so yeah, he stumbled upon it the other day, and it's blooming brilliant, to be fair.
Yeah,
he calls me the technical director, but I think I'm more of a technical idiot and I just use Google.
Well, I think we've all become IT support in the last 6 weeks, haven't we? To a ridiculous level. Even my mum and dad. My dad sent me a video via WhatsApp this morning. My head nearly fell off. I don't know that's never happened. This is a man who's never used technology before, and this is the level we're at now. He said, and then he said to me, I tried to send it via Messenger, but it might need compressing. I was like, this isn't even my dad anymore. I don't know who this man is. It's just become Bill Gates overnight. Do you know what I mean?
People are improving in lockdown. That's that's incredible.
It's an incredible achievement.
So good.
Yeah.
I managed to get, it's not anywhere near as impressive as that, but I managed to teach my mum how to download a podcast, and obviously that was remotely teaching her how to do it. And after about a week, I said, "Oh, so have you checked out the podcast?" And she went, "Oh no, I've no chance to watch it yet." I said, "No, mother, no, that's not how podcasts work." But never mind.
I know. But I mean, I think they've all just sort of. We have a Zoom quiz on a Sunday, and the first week was just sort of chaos. Do you know what I mean? People muting themselves, deleting the app. It was just a mess. And then now they're all flying. They're like, my dad's muting the mic so he can confer with my mum. I'm like, I don't know what's happened to these two. 70 years old and they've become IT gurus. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Do you reckon though, Scott, that once this is all over, that'll be it, and it'll be back to how do you do this and how do you do that?
Within sort of 2 days, they'll regress back to not being able to switch the telly on or something. It's bizarre. I don't know. It does feel like I'm writing bits and bobs about what the world's going to look like and whether there are any positives. But I think that's one of them, is that old people have suddenly had a massive technical boost. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's one positive. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be funny when they come out of it the other side. I think I've been very surprised how good they've picked it all up, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, you're going to start getting flowers, pictures of like wildflowers and stuff as they're going around, and it's going to be endless for you now, isn't it?
I might have to mute my own parents. That's what I'm thinking. Imagine having to mute them, like, from the WhatsApp group or something. Just like, I'll have a break. How long? A year. It's going to need a year's break from this conversation. Do you know what I mean? My dad taking pictures of everything, but they have started sending funny memes now, and I think that's the beginning of the end, isn't it?
It just like, is. Yeah.
It's relentless. I'm like, come on, Dad. Do you know what I mean? I've got stuff to do, mate. Do you know? I'm like, he's become the kid. He's become the teenager. Check this out. I'm like, come on, mate. Do you know what I mean? I've got stuff to do. So, but yeah, it's all right. How are you guys bearing up? Are you all in different parts of the country? Where are you?
Yeah, so we're both based in the southwest, so kind of broadly speaking near Exeter. I'm at my in-laws at the minute, so I'm actually right in the countryside, which is very nice. You might be able to hear the dogs howling below me. They haven't been out for their afternoon walk yet, so that'll be me a bit later on. But but yeah, we're doing all right, thank you.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I'm also on the M5 corridor, and I've had to move back with my mum, which has been entertaining because I'm one of those extremely vulnerable people, and my other half's a key worker. So, it's interesting living back with the parents.
Oh my God!
But to be fair, Sam, you're what, 12 weeks? You're supposed to be certainly at the moment 12 weeks, and it's flown by, isn't it? We must be halfway through now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we are about halfway through, and the end can't come quick enough.
Oh, lovely.
Everyone's had that little taste of going back to living at home again, which seems strange. It's like wherever you were when lockdown was announced, that's your default position now, isn't it? Yep. Which is a real sort of strange. It's sort of like, people who sort of pop round to someone's house to stay for the weekend. They might not really like them. And they were like, "Oh, no, you can stay over, mate. It'll be fine, yeah." And then they're like, "Right, I live here now." Shit. Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? You're like, "Oh, God, what are we going to do?" So, yeah.
There's quite a few people. I know of quite a few people who have got into fairly new relationships, and they are right in at the deep end. They're basically living with this person in lockdown, and I imagine that would be that's a baptism of fire, if nothing else, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because that's gone straight from sort of.
It's not the best start, is it?
No, that's gone straight from. Oh yeah, we had a good date at Nando's to this is your room. It's that sort of like. It's weird, isn't it? It's like all the needy people coming together. But yeah, it's I thought of that. It must be because for us it's the same situation really. I've literally just finished homeschooling my daughter, so she's and it's just very odd. Like we've got sort of just very strange days at the moment. I've got full sympathy with teachers because she's so lazy, man. She's just so lazy. She's very a capable girl, but my God, sort of drifts like talking about anything but just like I'm like, come on, mate, focus, mate. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is ridiculous. Come on, this is like, and then trying to do maths, even maths for a 10-year-old.
I was going to ask how old, yeah. Oof.
Yeah, when you haven't done maths for years, like you've sort of done the maths. I did bits at uni, but not like, like the sort of like long division. I was sat there going, oh, God, I'm going to have to Google this. Can't remember to do it anymore,
I don't think there's any shame in that. No shame in that whatsoever.
I know, yeah. But thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming. It's an absolute. It's our pleasure, honestly. And so, I mean, I guess to give you a bit of a very brief kind of intro to what the podcast is. So obviously, I'm a comedian. Sam's a musician. So together we are Commusician, and the whole.
Like that.
Thank you. The whole premise really is that we chat about comedy and music, and in about a year's time, although we've just been discussing, it's actually now about 10 months' time, Sam's going to do his first ever comedy gig, and I'm going to do my first ever music gig. So I'm going to learn guitar and we'll do a live pod, and that's the premise. So that's kind of where we're at. And yeah, but basically we'd just love to kind of have a little chat with you and find out a little bit obviously about you and how you got into it and things like that. And
sure.
And yeah, you're probably not going to be able to retire off the back of an appearance on here, but you never know.
No, it's very nice. I mean, that sounds like a bit like the program, like, do you remember like wives, not wives, sort of Faking It or something? Do you remember Faking It? When sort of you go and sort of you're switching roles now. I mean, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's a really interesting study, that actually, to whether you can do it. I mean, I don't play any instrument. I play the guitar badly, but that's it.
Oh, nice. That's better than me.
But
it's really cool,
it's just I play it.
Well, yeah.
Go on.
It's a really cool premise because. I basically, oh God, Siri's setting off. It's a really cool premise because I've always wanted to do a comedy set. Like I've kind of watched Fitz at gigs and I've watched other comedy gigs and always gone like, I'd really like to give that a go, but I just don't know if I've got what it takes. And I think Fitz has done exactly the same, but on kind of on the music side. So I'd love like later on to get your kind of your advice as to what you can offer me.
Well, I already think like Fitz has got the easier deal. If you want my honest opinion, because you're going to have that weird thing, Fitz, of going on there and being able to relax and not feel panicked into chasing any laughs of any discretion. It's just going to be, this is what I do.
That's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about that.
And also as well, the thing is, at the end of every song, they're going to clap. No matter how shit it is, they will clap. Because it's a Pavlovian response, isn't it? With music, you get a clap for, that's a man with an instrument. Congratulations, well done. Whereas you, Sam, you're going to have to work, my friend. You'll go like that. First 30 seconds, you're going to be, good evening. They're going to be, so what, mate? Get on with it. Where's the first punchline? You're going to be under pressure, mate. I want to come and see it.
You would be a welcome guest of honor. Don't worry about that.
Oh, that's terrifying. Thanks, Scott.
Sorry, take that. Do what you can with that. But yeah, it is that weird thing of though, isn't it? The difference in. I've noticed that before. Like I've been to sort of open mic nights and that, and like if you've got a guitar, it's already 15% more audience love. I think.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Right. But yeah, wow. Interesting. Yeah, but yeah, I've got some advice. I don't know. Well, I haven't really, but you know what I mean. That is an interesting social study, isn't it? I think.
Yeah,
it certainly will be, and it's either going to completely fail, or we're going to be masters of each other's crafts by the end of it.
Well, it's not going to fail, mate. Because did you not listen to Scott? I'm going to get a round of applause, whatever happens. They are going to applaud for me.
You could literally tune the guitar for about 15 minutes. At the end of it, people be like, "That's brilliant!" That it's so meta comedy. He just tuned the guitar, man. Oh, it's like Stuart Lee with a guitar. Brilliant.
Very, very good. So, Scott, what got you into comedy then?
To be honest, I was just a massive fan of comedy. So I've always loved it, and it's actually funny that you're swapping roles as comedy and music, because for me, comedy is like I love music, but comedy has been more important in my life than music, if I'm being honest. So like I remember the first time I saw certain things on telly, or I saw certain bits of stand-up, or I remember how I felt when I watched Knowing Me, Knowing You, or I sort of discovered Partridge for the first time. That's the sort of things for me where I feel like those moments in life, like event television, like watching Bottom on a Friday night, or watching Shooting Stars on a Friday night, that sort of has burnt into my brain, really.
Amazing,
and I think from that point on, I just thought, I don't know how to get into this. And I thought that for a long time. I thought, I don't know how to get into this, but I know that I love this, and I know that this is like everything I want, but I just don't know how to get into it. So that was the starting point for, God, 10 years really. I thought I got big into comedy about 15, 16, and then for about 15 years all I did was watch it and go see it and didn't do anything with it. It's very odd.
Amazing.
Very strange. Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of obviously shows that likewise I kind of watched as well when I was growing up, and I guess we did an episode a couple of weeks ago about kind of comedy inspirations, and I was just wondering who kind of inspired you. Who you mentioned obviously the shows and Partridge and whatnot, but were there any stand-ups that you watched and thought, oh yeah, they're brilliant?
Yeah, I think what it was very odd. I remember my dad brought home. It was like a free cassette on the front of the Daily Mirror. This was like I must have been about 12 or something, and he sort of said, "Oh, this has got some stuff on there you might like." And it had like it was really eclectic. So it had like Rowan Atkinson doing the head teacher speech. It had like bits. Do you know that one where he sort of does all? It's beautifully performed, and then
it is absolutely masterful. Yeah, I love it.
So perfect. And then they had like Peter Cook and Dudley Moore doing One Leg Too Few, which is like the Tarzan. I don't know if you've ever seen that one where Dudley Moore plays a one-legged Tarzan, and he's got one leg. He wants to be Tarzan, and Peter Cook sort of is interviewing him, and they play it so seriously. And then it's got that sort of classic line, which even at 12-year-old I was like, that's some of the best joke writing I've ever heard. Where he said, "Oh, listen, I've got nothing against your right leg. It's a beautiful leg. When it came in here, I thought that's a beautiful leg. I've got nothing against your right leg. The problem is neither of you." And that was like that moment when that joke landed, and I was just like, "Oh God, that's so good." And I don't know how. It's very odd because you even back then when something's great. So there's a lot of that going on that I was listening to a lot, and then I'm trying to think what was the first thing I discovered. I was into sort of the young ones. I remember watching that on telly, Red Dwarf. I remember watching all these sort of things quite young, like sort of 11, 12, and thinking, I really love this. And then the first sort of stand-up, or the first time I saw stand-up was I went to see Harry Hill when I was about 15, I think. Me and my mate bought tickets. He'd been doing these 5-minute spots on a show called, I think it was the Saturday Show that Lee Hurst presented off. So it's very odd. I can't remember. Oh, it might have been Lee Mack. Anyway, it was this like sort of show that was on telly, and Harry Hill popped up and did these 5-minute spots. It must have been quite early in his career. And I was just like, I don't know what this is, but it's hilarious. And then we went to see it, my mate and I, at City Varieties in Leeds. And we got on the front row, and it was the first time I'd seen stand-up. And I just remember about being tired, being knackered because I was laughing that much, just being absolutely exhausted. And watching him there, and when you watch someone like that, the control over the audience and the fact that everyone was in that same space, that head space, I was like, he's like a magician. Do you know what I mean? You step back and think, that's amazing. So I think that was the first time, sort of 15-year-old, when I thought, I love stand-up. And then it was just a case of, I just sort of carried on watching it. And there was a lot of stand-up on telly back then. So I was like, we're talking early 90s, where there was like stuff like, there was a thing called the Stand-Up Show. There was loads of like late night stand-up. There was like Live at Jongleurs used to be on, I'm sure, as well. And you'd catch comedians doing sort of like 20-minute sets, like Arnold O'Hanlon. You'd catch like Sean Locke, Dylan Moran, all these sort of like comics that were sort of coming up, Lee Evans, all these guys that were still doing, and you don't get that anymore. That's a real tragedy, really. You don't get those programs that, see these guys that are basically, when they're still on the circuit, doing 20 minutes of their best stuff. and you think, and it really hooks you in. Like, I think that's what's missing now. You don't get that sort of unknown discovery anymore. You tend to get Live at the Apollo tends to be a shoe-in affair that's been considered, and which is fine. But I think it's not that sort of raw purity that you used to get from watching people who are effectively doing a gig on the circuit. But it's just that there was a camera there. So I think that's when it sort of gelled with me that this was something that you could do. You know, you could actually do this as a career.
And I mean, I've seen, you know, some of those programs that you mentioned there, Scott, and we talked in our second episode, I think, about first gigs. I was just going to ask very quickly, can you remember the first gig that you did?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Obviously. So basically, I was 30, so I didn't start until I was like 2009, and I remember I'd been writing stuff and writing jokes, and what's really weird is when you do sort of stand up. I did bits at uni where I was doing like bits of Harry Hill's stuff and bits of like sketch stuff that is like, it was sort of like more of a review. So I wasn't writing much, and it was fine in terms of, it was the only thing I would say about that is, so I did a couple of false starts when I was at uni at Loughborough. I did like a couple of, they had reviews at the end of the year in like the houses you were in or whatever it is. I can't remember, the halls, that was it. And so people would turn up with guitars, like, and they'd turn up like and do covers and stuff. And then I sort of thought, I'll go, and I dressed as Harry Hill, even though I wasn't bald. It's so stupid. I don't know how that made any sense to anyone. However, I sort of did like some of his stuff, and someone sort of said to me, "Oh, right, you've got that time in, like, you know," even though it wasn't my own stuff. It was like, "Oh, you've already got, you sound like a comic." And I think it had gone in via osmosis. I'd watched that much stand up that I think I'd sort of learned the rhythm of it. And then I finished uni, went and, you know, met my wife at uni, and I just got a proper job, 9 to 5, doing like normal human being, and then sort of put it on ice for about 10 years. And then I started writing stuff. And this is what I didn't realize. You don't know if it's funny, do you? So you start writing and you've got no idea what's funny. But then I booked to do a gong show, which I didn't have any idea what these things were. So in Nottingham, it was above a pub, and you go and you get like 2 minutes grace, and then they can vote you off. It's a sounds horrendous on paper, and it's often horrendous.
It often is, yeah.
So this one, though, obviously it was quite. My wife was there. It was Halloween 2009, and there was hardly anyone in. And I went along, and I just thought, I'm going to have a go. And I can't even remember what my first 5 minutes were, but I remember I won the show on the first gig, and it was a weird feeling where I did think at the time, I thought, I might be reading so much into this, but I think I can do this. I think I the stuff I'm saying's like dog shit, but but you know what I mean. It's not that funny. It's not that funny. I need to improve that. However, I think if you've got something that the audience can sort of, it sounds right. I think that's the initial thing. Is like, you just got to feel comfortable up there. I think that's what I think people it gets you. You sort of think, I feel like I can do this. I don't feel terrified. I feel excited, and then it just came. And then, like, yourselves, like the first sort of year is just an apprenticeship, sort of flogging yourself in it around the country, and you sort of build, and then 10 years later, a pandemic wipes all that hard work out. So cracking. Yeah, there you go.
If you could go back to your younger self now, would you have any advice for him?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, because I think there's a lot of things in life where, and I say that to my daughter, is I didn't go for things. Like, I didn't have the confidence to just go for it. There's two things going on, really, because if I'd have started at 21 and not got a job and not gone into a career, then I'd have had a lot more time. I'd have probably been a lot further on and noticed more with the industry, blah, blah, blah. But you didn't have as much to talk about, or I didn't feel like I had much to talk about. So I think it's sort of a combination of confidence, and I think the thing is, the difficulty is, it's a lot to do with background, because I think if you're quite if you're from a background that's creative, like your mum and dad are in the arts, or your mum and dad have, know producers, or you're quite, privileged in that respect within the industry, then I think they would have probably turned around to me and gone, well, why don't you just see what happens? But I'm from a sort of working class sort of background where my dad's had 2 jobs forever and my mum works. And so like when you come out of uni and you've got 28 grand debt or whatever it is, you just go, right, I'm gonna start work. And I think that's the difficulty really, because when you it's very hard for someone to tell you about an industry you're not even aware of. Because if someone has sat down and gone, do you know how this works, show business or whatever, you've got to start, move to London, start working your way up. So I think there's a lot of things that I could have done back then to make it easier for me now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think it's one of those things you always look back and go, if I'd moved to London, I could have got on so quicker and been where I am in a year rather than 10 years, don't you? It's an interesting point.
And I think that's changing though. I think London, it's not so London centric anymore, and I think this industry, the good does rise to the top eventually. But I think it's more from a personal viewpoint. I think I limited myself because I was too panicked about not having any money or not taking a chance or it not working out. And my parents really didn't understand what the hell it was. I mean, my dad's great and my mum and dad are great, but I think secretly they're just thinking, what's he doing? I think like my mum's like, I think you should get a job again. Secretly I think she's thinking, you are shouting punchlines into a webcam in a shed, love. I think we've probably reached the end of the road, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think it's to do with, there's so many factors really, but I think I would have told myself to, have a go at things, go for it, throw caution to the wind, I think. And that's what I'll try and tell my children the same,
I think that's well, that's a really good advice for your children, but also kind of leads very nicely on to obviously what you're doing at the moment. So would you mind telling the listeners a little bit about what you've been doing since the pandemic started, I guess?
Yeah, so when the world caved in, pretty much. I mean, it's a very strange. It is weird, isn't it? I mean, I'll be honest. It's one of those things where I've had this shed. I'm in here now, so it's like I'm spending so much time in here, and I feel like slowly I'm going mad. It's like a long term sort of. I feel like I'm going nuts. Do you know what I mean? Because the thing is, I'd had this shed. Like I'd been writing in here. I had it when I quit my day job, and my wife got me it. I think at the time it was like a lovely gesture, and then now I'm looking back and thinking it was just to keep me out of the house. I think effectively it's like getting a dog a really nice kennel, isn't it? That's the sort of thing. He'll be all right down the bottom of the garden, and so I'm down the bottom of the garden now. And I've got it sort of set up. It's got carpets in and stuff, and like I've done it up. Do you know what? I'm useless at DIY, but it all came together on this shed. Do you know what I mean? This has become. Oh, I'm so proud of myself. It's insulated. I've put it's electrics are in here. My God, I don't know what happened there. When it comes to the house, it's falling apart, but the shed, sweet, mate.
Nailed it.
And I think it's like I've been isolating in there really since long before it was trendy, but it's I called it hiding from my own kids, but it's a similar thing. So but yeah, so what I've done is I was in the shed and then obviously, but the last gig I did was the 14th of March, which was at the Nottingham Glee. And I sort of came off stage and everyone had been sort of touching elbows and there'd been like a little bit of social distance and everyone was laughing about it, to be honest. And I never thought, hey, it's just going to continue like this, just reduce numbers. Do you know what I mean? And you'd be like, I'd be all right. And then it's sort of like when they made the announcement, it was just like, it was the nearest, I sort of joked to Gemma and said, it's the nearest I've ever come to being cancelled as a comedian. Do you see what I mean? I've sent out some weird tweet that's propped up. I've done a legion. They found a tweet from 2007 that I've said something contentious, and then every email was just dates being pulled out the diary, and literally the diary just evaporated in must have been 48 hours, and I was just like, oh my God. So it was one of those things where I thought, well, what do? Do you know what I mean? I'm a firm believer in, and this has surprised me because I'm a panicker and a worrier, and it would have been much. It would have been. What's very funny is in the past I've gone under mentally for so much less than this. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sort of things like when I left my job to do stand up, that I found that really tough, and I think I found the guilt and the thing about gamble. Because if I'd have stayed in my day job, I'd have been sweet now, really. But that's a different conversation. But it's like those things. So like when this came along, this was like a huge crisis that no one could have predicted. So I think people. There's been I've read a few things where they said people who suffer from anxiety are actually doing okay. I'm obviously there's people struggling, but generally there's a feeling that everyone's in it together, and it's something that because everyone's feeling the same. There's like a real feeling of community out there,
strength in numbers almost.
The strength in numbers, and I did think, well, I've still got an audience. There's still people who want to watch comedy. I'm still people who've bought tickets for any shows I've done, and I thought, I've got all these people that I've been putting stuff out on my Facebook page, building an audience, and I just thought, well, that doesn't need to stop, does it? Surely. And so I just put a little video out that night. It was literally the night, I think it was the first Thursday where it had all gone downhill. And I said, look, if I do a stand-up show from in here, will anyone be interested in watching it? And it was an overwhelming response. And then I just thought, right, let's, and it's grown into a weekly show. And
a brilliant weekly show, if we may say so.
Thank you. Yeah, but I have now realised that I've got to write 50 minutes of stand up every week, which is just like, oh, you idiot, Scott. But it's one of those things where it's been a really good way of connecting with people, and I think it's just something that I never would have done if this pandemic hadn't have happened.
That actually leads me really nicely onto my next question, because I don't know if you're aware, but we, at the end of every pod, we have a kind of shout out and a spotlight on different people and who are doing amazing things during this whole horrible crisis. And yours, a couple of episodes, was one. So we did Stand Up as a Shed as our kind of shout out to the world.
Appreciate that.
Our small musician word, anyway. Now, how do you find material every week? Because that's a big ask, because that's a big set to do every week.
Yeah,
and might I say, I watched episode 1 and 2 last night, and they were phenomenal. They were brilliant.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's weird. I've sort of the first one, it was sort of me finding my feet. So I basically, in terms of the material, I tend to write all the time anyway, and I did that before the pandemic. So every day I'll try and write something or noodle around an idea I've got. So I was quite fortunate in that obviously I've been going a while as well, so I've got quite a backlog of material, but also I try and make the first 20 minutes topical, and by topical I'm trying to get away from the sort of the standard coronavirus stuff, but more like, I mean, this week I sort of looked at motivation, because it's really interesting that some people are saying, that this is the time where we're going to come out of this. People are going to come out of this with a play they want to write, or they're going to come out of this fitter or learn a new musical instrument. That's you, Fitz, that one. But then I just thought, well, what about these people that come out with nothing? Let's celebrate them. Let's, why do we have to feel guilty about being lazy? Because I think, like, for me, time isn't the problem. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things where you're like, just because I've got a pandemic doesn't mean I'm going to turn out a sitcom. And so I think it's one of those things where, I want to get into, like, celebrating the people who, maybe are just, bumbling through in a way. So there's like bits of stand up where I'm writing, where I'm thinking, this isn't just about the pandemic. This is about the psychology of it and how it's making people feel. And I think that's genuinely an interesting thing to write about anyway. So I think that's where my starting point is. And the show sort of evolved, really, that every week now I'm trying to theme it slightly, and we're getting people writing in now and sort of suggesting things. And I always got Gemma in here with me, and I've got my mum and dad at the end of the phone. So we're trying to make it, the main thing is just to make it positive, really, and a bit of an escape for 50 minutes to an hour every week for people.
How is it having Gemma there as well? Because that, I tell you what, that cracked me up so much. Just having Gemma, just the kind of the one laugh in the room. How is it, kind of performing to nobody other than Gemma?
Well, it's been one of those things because I was saying that when I first started the first one, I was a bit at 6s and 7s because it's really hard. I didn't really get the idea of performing to a webcam and Gemma being in it. It was really weird. But I think as the weeks have gone on, I've really sort of embraced it because I think if you think of the webcam as the audience, you can actually sort of vary that. You can come close to it. You can sort of vary the way you're approaching it, and it's a bit like just doing a telly thing, I think. And I think you can start to make the dynamic work. But having Gemma here, I think is the missing ingredient because I think it's what transcends it from a Zoom conference to a gig.
Yeah.
And I think it was that was intentional by any means because I just sort of said, I'm going to do this thing in the shed. Do you want to just come and sit in and so it feels like I'm not doing it on my own? And it was really weird. I didn't know how it would work. And now she started chipping in, and she can look at the Facebook feed at the same time. And obviously, we've got a few features now where we can banter with each other. And I think it's been the missing thing, having a little bit of another human in there. Has actually made it feel less awkward and more natural.
I think it adds so much for what it's worth. Gemma's laugh is amazing, and
I know,
you're quite right. So I've got a online kind of virtual gig coming up in a couple of weeks, and similarly, my reservations beforehand were, oh, well, surely I wouldn't be able to hear people laughing. But my understanding now is that you can people in the audience can have their microphones unmuted, so that would make it a bit better. But obviously having a person there to hear that laughter, as a comic, that's what we live for. So it makes a huge difference, I'm sure.
I think it's just as well, what I've realized is that it's a very odd thing because I think online gigs, I've got to try, and I think I'll be able to process this when we come out a few months out the other side, is I think there's definitely, from an artistic point of view, it's been really interesting because I would have said, if you'd have said to me, you're going to be doing a gig in a webcam, I'd be like, nah, that sounds like a dreadful idea. But as the time goes on, you start to realize that people want to see stuff. They want to see stand, and it's not stand up in the sort of the traditional sense. I think they want to see things that are more, maybe a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more nuanced, but also I think they want to see more of you, more of your personality, and it becomes like they consider it, I think, more like a friend they are FaceTiming. And I think if you approach it from that way, I think it does start to feel like you're having a conversation. I mean, I went into it probably naively because when I first started, I didn't know anything about the tech, and I just thought I'm going to do it to Facebook because that's the easiest way of doing it. So I'm not going to have the opportunity to have any audience feedback now. This is the format I'm working with, but having someone in there with me is great. But I just think it's going to be a really interesting thing coming out the other side, and how it actually changes your relationship with the audience. Because I don't think it'll replace live stand-up, but I think it's an extra dimension that no one could have predicted.
For sure. Do you think you'll continue it?
Yeah.
On the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. And I again, I would have said that's not the thing, but I think I'm going to make it a weekly thing, and I'm going to make it like a vlog. So what I'm going to try and use it for is my own new material gig every week.
Amazing.
And that's the plan. And I think it helps me have a deadline, and it helps me to try things out. And if I can maintain that audience, I think what people forget is that we're all trying to build an audience, aren't we? We're all trying to build people that like us and come to see you and invest in you. And if you could keep that dialogue going, give people things to listen to and watch, then I think it's only going to be better. I mean, you look at how many people have built careers from YouTube and Facebook now.
Yeah.
So we're just surfing that wave now, really. And that is not a language that people are unable to process. I think it's maybe for people like me who've not done it, it's just been a really interesting experience.
I think from a writing point of view as well, to have the pressure of having to write a new, nearly a new hour every week, that is a brilliant thing for you as a comic to be able to kind of work that muscle, I guess, that much. And, I guess it's similar to if you're writing for, topical news shows, for example, and it must kind of work those muscles in the same way. And obviously you're only going to improve as a comic, I would have thought.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people who are getting sort of scared about, what we're going to be like when we go back gigging. Are we going to be rusty? And I think it's like there's more muscles than just performance. If you've come out of this pandemic and you've written, God help us if it goes on to Christmas, however, but, I think I will have written so much stuff that I know when I look back over all these videos and all this stuff, there'll be stuff there I can use. And writing every week means I'm constantly working that muscle. And if it's only the fact that within 2 or 3 gigs, you'll get used to the timing again. And fact that you're in people. It might be weird when I'm just going, shut up, will you? I just want a webcam. Get rid of these people. I just want a webcam. Can we bring a shed on stage? I feel more comfortable in. I'll have to wear a chipboard suit to feel more comfortable. But it's like just walking around with a bit of chipboard or something. But it's like I think it's one of those things where I know if I keep writing every week, then at least it's not going to be wasted. And I feel like. I already know, because what's been really interesting, I had an Edinburgh show ready to go and everything, which was about, it was ironic really, it was about human beings having no time to stop. Which is really, I mean, the irony of that is beautiful. So,
it really is,
so effectively, I'm still going to be doing that show, but I'm going to be writing a section all about the pandemic. So it's actually becoming. I said to my wife last night, this could actually be the most on point zeitgeist show I've ever written, really, because I think it's interesting to almost have a show pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and say, look, what have we learned? And hours one fed into the other,
Yeah, that's such a cool way of looking at it. And do you think it could, I guess talking into a camera, it's almost preparing you for that work. It could almost lead anywhere, couldn't it? You could, and if it gets seen by the right people, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is I'm hoping something does come of it. I mean, we're all in that same situation. I don't get me wrong, I have anxieties. I mean, I have to look at the reality. The reality for me was, I'm 41. I was right poised. I mean, no one knows, no one's got a crystal ball, but I was having the best 2 years of my career. 19 and start at 20. I had so much stuff lined up, and it was all looking like it was going to come together. I was going to get opportunities and finally try and get that break. And so I'm not naive to the fact that at the moment everything's on hold, and I don't know. I have this anxiety about time. I don't know if I've got enough time to put it right, because I think for a lot of people, starting late in comedy is fine if everything clicks into place. But if you don't predict a full global shutdown, and I think it's one of those things where my sort of anxiety is, if the boat, I've missed the boat on being picked up or propelled through the industry. It's one of those things where it's I don't lose sight of the fact that I love doing it, and that's the thing. But the reality is, 41, 2 children, a mortgage, gave up a career. And I've got that in the back of my head where I'm thinking, how long do you have to get to where you need to be? And it's just a very interesting, that is the constant voice in the back of my head, you see. And I think it's been a lot louder since this pandemic started.
Well, I can 100% kind of empathise with that for sure, Scott. But you said something, and I've said it on the podcast before, that comedy is a meritocracy. So the people who are the hardest working and are the funniest ultimately are going to make it. And I have every faith that someone like yourself, and I've got every faith that you're going to absolutely smash it, pandemic or not. And we're really, really looking forward to seeing how you do adjust and how you have adjusted. You've already kind of done it, not to blow smoke up your bum or anything like that, but you've already shown that you were one of the first people I knew of, certainly when this pandemic started, to start doing something virtually. And so if you're moving quickly, then you're at the head of the queue, as it were.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, it did make me laugh because someone sent me a message and went, "Oh God, I saw you on the news and with the shed thing." And he said, "Like, who did you get to do PR?" I was like, I just love the idea that imagine that I'm sat at home and I'm going, right, I'm not gonna go down the Live at the Apollo route. I'm not gonna go to Edinburgh, darling. I've got a great idea. I'm gonna hang back until there's a global pandemic, and then that's when I'm going to strike. Yeah. That's when I'm going to strike. When I'm going to get a little bit of fame at a time where I can do absolutely nothing with it. That's where I'm going to be. Just like, so it's not by design, but yeah, I think for me it's just I just want to keep doing this as long as I can, and this pandemic has cast a little bit of doubt on that, because obviously there's a romance to doing like any of the arts, and it's a privilege to do them, but there's a reality behind that, isn't there? Which is, you need to look after your family. So it's like one of those things where you just hope. I just want to be able to come out of it and places to be open to gigging, theatres to be back, and people wanting to go and sit in the same room as each other. That's the thing we're all hoping for, I think.
It certainly is. Yeah, you're not wrong. It kind of leads, I guess, nicely. One of the things I was hoping to ask, you've kind of touched on it already, actually, which is nice. But what would, if you look back in 5 years' time, for example, or 10 years' time, what would constitute a success? What would your dream be, if you don't mind me asking, over the next few years?
A bigger shed, obviously. I think, yeah, a nice shed with an ensuite. I mean, what's really interesting is Gemma said to me the other night, because she's got her own business. So we're both self-employed, so we've both been hit, but she's sort of trying to pick up the remains of what she's got. And she said, "Oh, I think I could do with a shed." And I'm like, this is ridiculous now. We're going to have 3 sheds in the garden. I said, we might as well get the kids one as well. Get the kids a shed each, and we'll have a line of sheds, and it'll look like Brighton seafront in our back garden. Everyone in their own shed. We'll sell the house, and everyone will just live in their own shed, so we'll just see each other every morning, But I think the actual the dream really is, and it's a very interesting one, because I think where comics, where I want to be, is quite very clear really. Is I want to have be able to tour under my own name in doing theatres of a certain size, where people come to see you and they buy tickets and they respond to everything you do. I think that's as simple as it gets, really. And be able to have enough sort of fame, if you like. I said the wrong word, but is enough people are aware of you that what you do gets noticed, because I'm confident that I can produce the quality of things that I want to do. I think it's just fighting through to get noticed is the struggle. So I think it's one of those things where, yeah, that would be the same for me, and obviously to be able to have support then doing the projects that I've got, that I've wrote, and things that I want to do would be lovely. But I think the key really is that following, which is happening. It's taking time, but that would be the moment really. And I think I read it. I heard an interview. I heard an interview with I forget. It might have been David Baddiel actually. It was on a podcast, and he sort of said when Bill Bailey made it, because what happens is a lot of people, I think, where they're anxious and they're sort of and when they make it, they become nicer people. I think that's what a common thing, because the pressure's off, or they've got that sort of validation. Where I think for Bill Bailey, I think that the common thing was he's just the same. It's just Bill Bailey was a nice. He just and I think that's the same with me. It's not going to change who I am in any way, but I think what it would do is take the pressure off a bit. And just to enable me to get that point where I go, I can take a breath now and feel like we are where we want to be,
Amazing. And of course, when you've got the stadium tours sell out, and you've already got your idea. Well, you've already got the stage set up with a shed, I imagine. Easy.
Do you know what? I've got it already. You're laughing, but I've already planned that. The stepping out of the shed show. That's the thing. So it's going to be. I am seriously considering. I watched. I went to see Oasis when they did the Be Here Now tour in the 90s, and I saw them come out of a giant clock, I think, and it was like a huge set. Wow. And I said to someone, I need someone to build me a massive shed with a big door that I'm coming out of, like not Spinal Tap style where it's really small, but huge, and then I could push the door open. You know what I mean? And come through a chipboard structure, and that's the thing. I am gonna. That is the plan. Stepping out of the shed tour. That's what it's so good.
Exactly that. So I guess as a final question, if that's all right, Sam's obviously going to be entering into the world of stand-up, just wondered if you had any advice that he might be able to glean from you and use on his journey.
Right, Sam, have you got a shed? I'm joking. No, what would I say? I think the thing is, what I would say is take your time. That's the first thing. Don't rush it, but also try and be yourself. And that sounds a weird thing. I think there's a lot of, when you first start, there's a lot of comics make the mistake of being the comic they think they want to be, whereas actually you've got to let that come to you. So I would say, have a think about, just be natural. Just try and relax, and don't try and oversell what you're doing initially, if that makes sense. Try and, because the more relaxed you are, the more relaxed the audience will be. And take a breath as well, because I the amount of times I've seen, and I used to do it, is where you go up and you grab the mic and you start speaking before you've even put the mic to your mouth because you're so terrified. I would say have a moment just to say hello and look around the room and let the things settle, and then start doing your stuff,
That is an amazing, that is some great advice. I think that's I haven't asked many people for advice. I think mainly only Fitz, but that is the first bit of good advice that I've had.
Thanks, Matt.
Also, my other bit of advice is keep your guitar on stage, because if the shit hits the fan, you can always pick that up.
We've only gone and bloody done it, mate. Our first interview with the blooming brilliant Scott Bennett. What do you think?
He was so much fun. Just straight from the off, I felt comfortable in knowing that he's actually a funny guy. Our first comedian that we've had on the show is a bloody good one.
A little bit offensive.
It bodes well.
Bear in mind that we have literally done every episode together, and you're now saying Scott's the first comedian we've had. Brilliant. Thanks, mate. Ever so much.
Well, you know what I meant. What I meant. The first third-party comedian.
Oh, very nice. Nice. Do you want a shovel to dig yourself out of that hole? It was amazing. Like, all joking aside, lol. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And what a lovely guy, and B, what an interesting story, and how he's kind of dealt with this pandemic and the world falling in on itself. Is brilliant. I think it's really inspirational, and I thoroughly enjoyed that, and lovely interview skills by the way.
Yeah, and to yourself as well. I'm very impressed with yourself. It was really, really good fun. I've certainly learnt a lot, and I think now more than ever I'm more excited to do it, and I feel like I've got Scott's backing to give my hand at comedy. And what was it we said last week? I was gonna beat you in a competition, I think, didn't we?
Well, I look forward to the day, my friend. I really do. So it's been quite a long episode. So I think thanks so much for listening, everyone. We really, really, really do appreciate it, and thank you for getting in touch. What can people do to help the pod, Samwise?
Well, they can give it a like, give it a share, give it a subscribe. You can find us Commusician Pod on all the socials, or just on your podcast app, look for Commusician, and then give it a review. 5-star reviews on iTunes really, really help massively. So give us a shout, or alternatively, you can always email us commusicianpod@gmail.com and just get in touch, and we'll have a nice little chat about what we did wrong or what you liked about the pod.
Yes, I like the fact that you led with what we did wrong. Brilliant, full of confidence.
You can guarantee that we got Queen wrong in some aspect, didn't we? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. But what about Scott? More importantly, what about Scott
Great
Bennett?
minds think alike, my friend. Great minds. How can people get in touch with Scott Bennett? You're quite right. So, Scott B Comedy UK is his handle on Instagram and Twitter. On Facebook, he is Scotty B Comedy, and on YouTube, if you search for Scott Bennett, you will find him. So please do. And he's kind of a spotlight. We couldn't really put our spotlight on anyone else on this episode, I don't think, could we?
Yeah, it'd be a bit awkward, wouldn't it?
Would be a little bit.
Yeah. I totally agree, and as well, if you've got some time free, I highly recommend going over to Facebook and just search for Stand Up in the Shed, and watch a couple of his stand up shows. They are fantastic, and they certainly brought many a smile to my face during these trying times.
They did, and they will continue to do. And I very, very much feel like we've had a bit of a coup by getting him on, because I love Scott, and I think he is destined for greatness. And so we, from all of us, i.e. you and me, Sam, at Commusician, we wish you the very best of luck, Scott. Not that you need it.
Yes, we do. We really, really do.
Amazing.
Well, anybody out there, just give them a listen. Tell us what you think, and we'll see you next week.
We will indeed. We shall bid you adieu for now, but much love, and to you, Mr. Turner, have a great week. See you in a bit.
And to you, Mr. Fitz. Bye now.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening to Commusician Pod. Intro music was Gangster Life by Dirty Blueprint. This podcast was brought to you by Fitz and Sam. See you next week.